Sasha Banks and Naomi walk out of WWE Raw. They say it's issues with creative. Who's at fault here? Sasha Banks, Naomi, or WWE? We're going to talk about it all in just a second with our special guests. Stay tuned. It's WrstlXtra.
Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy A-Dowz, the Black Wrestling Advocate. As always, joined by my tag team partner, Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will. Also, you'll see, if you're watching us live on YouTube, you'll see we have two friends with us down here. We have Katrina and Stephanie, both from Women's Wrestle Talk. Ladies, introduce yourself. Katrina, we'll come to you first. Go for it.
Thanks for having me. I'm Katrina from In Cat We Trust, which is a brand I have, which does a whole bunch of stuff, including wrestling and wrestling interviews. And then I also am with Women's Wrestling Talk, where I do writing and hosting duty on Women's Wrestling Talk. So
okay, Stephanie, go for it.
Well, hey, you guys. I'm Stephanie Hardy, host and creator of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, which is a podcast centered on talking about wrestling in a chill, positive, and passionate manner. And I'm also a host and writer of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. And I work with Katrina, and TK Trinidad is in charge of all of us, and we love her so very much. And I'm also a commentator for the Belladonna division, the first all-female women's promotion in the state of Alabama.
Wow. So I'm here with super women, and me and Mex are just two bodyguards. I guess we're just looking at you two right now because we've got nothing else to do here.
Common
you
folk
are the
today.
professionals, Katrina's not a new face to me. I've seen Katrina about. Stephanie's a little bit of a new face to me. But with all those things that she just mentioned, I probably should have known Stephanie a long time ago. But let's get into this. Unfortunately, we're here to talk about something that's just a little less positive, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. So as Mex mentioned, Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out on Raw yesterday. It was held in Norfolk, Virginia. The reports suggest that, the statement, should I say? Let's go to the statement first. The statement from WWE suggests that the ladies were upset and felt as if they weren't respected enough, and that they went and visited John Laurinaitis in his office, placed down their titles, and left the building based on the fact that they weren't happy with creative and also two of the talents that they were supposed to work with. They were supposed to work with them, of course, in the main event of last night's Raw, which was supposed to be a six-pack challenge involving the tag team champions, Sasha and Naomi, Doudrop, Nikki ASH, Becky Lynch, and Asuka. Now, the thing that's had us all a little bit perplexed and asking questions as to what's going on, what's the real truth here, is that we found out that the ladies were upset with their creative and had meetings, one or two meetings with both Vince and whoever the producers were for the match and the show. And we've had a few different accounts as to what's going on. Mex, I'm going to head to you real quick. Can you kind of give us, what are these different things that we've heard about these meetings and how it supposedly actually went down?
So it seems as if they were all brought together like they do. They come to the show early to kind of set up everything. And it looks like there and then they were probably informed of this six-pack challenge. WWE said in their statement that this was advertised and they've basically messed up the advertised. That's a lie. This match was not advertised anywhere. Like you said, as the show opened, we're going to have this. And from there, I think what's come out is that they weren't happy that they were going to be in this. It doesn't really benefit them as tag team champions. Now, some of the kind of unverified information that's come out about this is that someone close to Sasha Banks or an insider or something along these lines has basically said Naomi, I think it was confirmed by Fightful, Naomi was supposed to go over. The rumor is she was actually supposed to pin Sasha Banks.
Yeah.
So where they've went on and said, yeah, how is this going to benefit our tag team? I'm going to pin my tag team partner. And then what's going to happen? Are we not going to have any kind of conflict or, address this? And they've basically been told no, that you're going to go on and just do what you need to do. That Naomi was going to go on and obviously then challenge Bianca Belair. Sasha Banks would somehow rise to being the number one contender on SmackDown and go and work with Ronda Rousey. And ultimately, Sasha was going to put over Ronda. Naomi was going to put over Bianca. Nothing was going to be done to strengthen these guys as a tag team in our eyes. And ultimately, the tag team titles are just props on them to look special somewhat, but it's not actually doing anything for the division.
And for me now, I'm going to come to you ladies on this point here. For me, I think the issue now then comes is that, WWE have gone on record and in their statement, and then with Corey Graves on commentary as calling these ladies unprofessional. We also, again, had this statement that was put out within minutes of it happening, not the next day, not a few days later. Katrina, give me your thoughts as to why that part of this whole situation is a little bit sketchy and why we feel, I guess, the way that we feel.
So I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what happened. I don't work for WWE. I don't know Vince. I don't know Trinity or Naomi personally. Most people will know. I will tell you, though, I absolutely love Naomi. I always felt she was a bit unappreciated in WWE and that they don't treat her as talented as she is. They do not really allow her to showcase that. And why I thought they was going to do something with her in Charlotte where she, really showed us what I was already aware of or what her fans was already aware of. Nothing really came for it. And this is not to, again, diminish her role as the tag team champion with Sasha. I actually love them together, team bad. My issue was if this is if this is part of her storyline, to have it, I'm not sure. I think my biggest issue was the way it was said. They didn't want to work with Doudrop. They didn't want to work with Asuka. People they have all shared the ring with multiple times. To me, that sounded really sketchy. Why would this random day in May 2022 is the day they decide they don't want to work with women they've already worked with before? And then to have Corey Graves, who already irritates me on a regular basis, some of the things that comes out of his mouth on commentary, that was also very annoying because any other person who feels let's say it is because they felt unappreciated. And I personally think, in particular to Naomi, she is completely unappreciated in WWE. I feel like if you're in a place where you want to work and you have to travel and be away from home and family, you should also feel happy doing your job. And if we are about the people on social media where it's oh, if you're unhappy, quit. I have quit a job because the job was horrendous after a while and I got tired of what I was dealing with every day. And so I quit. And so I totally get wanting to be, happy in your space. I've been saying this forever. The one real tag team we had for the women's tag teams, I believe, was the Iconics. They were an actual tag team. Everybody else was kind of thrown together. So if you have these teams thrown together and they're trying to work with what they got, and then you guys put them in a match to put over Ronda and Bianca, and I love Bianca, but it's not necessary. We don't need to put Bianca over because she's over. We love her. we want Bianca to keep shining. We want her to keep thriving. We want her on top. We don't need Sasha and Naomi for that. Ronda, and I'm not going to go on the right on what I feel about her in WWE, but she's over off name alone. She's Ronda Rousey. You don't need to use two black women who's already kind of we don't know what's going on with the creative situation to put over two women who are currently the champions. They're champions. We don't need that. I totally understand if they wanted to have a tag team match at pay-per-view, makes sense to me. They'll showcase their titles, showcase what they can do with women that need some shine too. It shouldn't be used to let's have this random match. And then it's oh, I'm pinning my tag partner. We still don't get anything out of this. and then we're supposed to be fine with that. Naomi is probably one of the most unproblematic people I've ever seen. I've said this as well. Like even with Total Divas, you had the other women kind of being shady on the green screen room. She was always the one woman who was never in drama, never said what she needed to say. It was none of that underhanded stuff. So for Naomi to walk as well tells me that it's not the way it's being portrayed. Like they just wanted to be unprofessional. I think that was my biggest thing. I don't like black women being told we need to tone stuff down.
Right.
I hate that. I feel like while we're all not going to talk the same and we're all not going to express things the same, why is it that when a black woman says that they're well, I mean they were, but they like the Iconics came in apart as a tag team. So like they are best friends, but they were never packaged in the very beginning as a tag team. The Iconics was, I think, the only packaged like kind of like the Usos are. Like they came in as a tag team. So yeah, to have people saying, oh, it's unprofessional and they should just do their job, but then you praise Toni Storm for dipping. And while yes, it was after a show, Sis said she was done with wrestling. And then all of a sudden, I see the social media post, oh, Toni Storm is all elite. And again, power to her if she felt that was the better move for her to be happy if she was burnt out. But there was praise for it. So if it's okay for her to feel whatever she had to do was the option. When Jeff Hardy left, one of the biggest Jeff Hardy fans, and everybody knows I love me some Jeff Hardy. The first thing, well, if he was mad at WWE, it's fine because he can be tired, and it was praised. Even if he got let go and it was all that weird stuff with the drug testing, the point is it was praised because he wasn't happy. So if they're saying I'm not happy creatively, and they thought that was the option, and that's what they did, why do they now be deemed the loud, undisrespectful, unprofessional black women? That is my biggest issue with all of that. I don't think we have to tone stuff down. It's okay for us to say we're upset about something. We can stand up for ourselves. And it seems like they were trying to, for the division as a whole, to kind of stand up like, aren't these supposed to be like belts for the women's division as a tag team? Like, why are we just used as random filler matches? And then they're not even on Raw's technical roster. They're a SmackDown start. And while I know the whole back and forth with sometimes they'll appear in other shows, technically, all that nonsense where people are like, oh, but people paid to see them. Did they though? Because outside of yesterday, was it really announced everywhere that Naomi and Sasha was going to be there? And people were like, oh my God, I can't wait. Like, no, let's not do the BS. I didn't see some really racial things, very disrespectful, racist things said in the last 3 hours or so. And so that's another thing that's been really bothering me is how quick wrestling fans are ready to pull that inward, ready to compare the women to like monkeys and stuff. And I literally just saw this about 20 minutes ago with that tweet. So it shouldn't be that like as soon as somebody is, oh, here y'all just waiting to call women black women, oh, they're unprofessional, when it's praised, when other people complain and do the exact same thing. I feel like that if it's this, Naomi, and again, I love Sasha too, and I love that she likes to stand up for herself. I think that's something we need to do in general with places we work at. But again, Naomi's one of the most unproblematic people, and if she too was like, yeah, no, it's not, and I've heard some stories about John as well, and I tend to believe when people say things multiple times about the same person, I'm going to tend to believe that there's some truth to kind of how you are backstage. Everybody's not going to be walking about the same thing. So that's just my basic how I felt about it. It's just like I don't like a lot of the racial undertones in it, and I don't like the whole like black women to tone it down because no, the hell we don't.
And that's the thing for me as well. Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to comment on this one. How does it feel to be a black female fan? Obviously, you're also a writer and contributor to what we do here within professional wrestling. How does it feel when you see that type of reaction on Twitter, where black women are being told to just take it or to tone down, where you're then deemed unprofessional or too loud and all that kind of stuff? How does it feel to see that when, in the grand scheme of things, based on what we've been told, again, we don't know the actual facts, but based on what we've been told, that these two ladies were just literally trying to make sense of the creative decisions that were being made instead of simply saying, I don't like this, I'm going. How does that feel?
As a black female fan / journalist in this business, and basically just a long time fan, and watching people online sort of argue back and forth about whether or not these women deserve to even be to have the right to say anything about how they're booked on their show. It's disheartening and ridiculous. I feel like even this week, with a lot of what has transpired even in our country consistently on a regular basis, being attacked when we're just living our lives, it's already hard enough on the outside of wrestling to deal with that and to try to find a way to move on. But then when it's within something that you love and hold dear as wrestling, it's even more disheartening, because wrestling is a place where you go to sort of escape the BS of life, of real life. And when stuff like this happens, we don't know exactly what transpired, because it's like Katrina said, we weren't backstage, we don't work for them. So there's only so much we can say about it. But when you see other people online who also don't have that power and also don't work for the company saying that they're doing too much or they're saying too much, is absolutely ridiculous. And it just goes to show you that anytime a Black woman in wrestling, whether they be a professional or somebody who works behind the scenes or whatever, says something about being uncomfortable with the situation, we're always villainized. And it's not so far from the truth in real life, and it's not so far from the truth in wrestling. This happened at the very beginning of the year with Big Swole. When she said what she said about why she left AEW and how so many people was coming after her, and we had to come up out of ourselves to sort of wrap our arms around her and let us know how, and let her know how much we love and appreciate her for speaking up on behalf of herself and for Black women wrestlers, and also for her own family, her daughter, her husband. And the thing about Sasha and Naomi is the fact that when it comes to Naomi, a lot of people ignore the fact that Naomi has just about the same amount of tenure as Natalya does. I feel like Natalya gets more respect simply because of the fact that she was trained in the Heart Dungeon and because she has worked really hard. But you also have to understand that Naomi was right there in the midst of the Divas era, just like she was. So she deserves the same amount of respect as a Natalya does, because they've been there and been tenured at around the same time. And when it comes to Sasha Banks is a star. Point blank, period. And she's the greatest women's wrestler of all time. That's my opinion. You cannot deny her star power. You cannot deny her wrestling power. You cannot deny her love for the craft of wrestling. Because every time she goes on a break, she always goes somewhere else and learns different other types of wrestling to add to her arsenal, to make it more interesting and make you see other things that you haven't seen before as on a mainstream level. And then you see everything that she has done outside of wrestling with the national championship between Alabama and Georgia this year in football. And then you also have her with the Mandalorian, and her even being on Kevin Hart's show. Then I can't remember the name, but she was on there with Kevin Hart. This woman is showing that she is a mainstream superstar, whether people want to recognize it or not. So these are women, and of course, within wrestling, they have won multiple championships, 1,000 times over, and even Sasha has won awards based off of the fact that her and Bianca made history last year, at WrestleMania in the main event, being the first two Black women to main event. And Naomi is a part of the foundation for that. So if these women who have done so much for wrestling and have done everything they can mainstream wise to even, put wrestling out there, feel the need to say something about how their tag titles are being booked, especially since the tag titles weren't even on the WrestleMania Backlash card, then they have the right to say it. They have the right to speak out on something that makes them uncomfortable. And anyone that's calling these women unprofessional because of it literally has a bias, and they need to check their bias at the door and realize that we deserve just as much opportunity to put our stuff on the table and let people know what we have to offer and let them know what our value is and add text to it. And if they can't deal with it, then they need to check that at the door right now, because we are not going to sit here and pretend that we do not work twice as hard to only get half. That's not something we're going to pretend that doesn't happen. And if you have such an issue with Black women saying things and letting their value be known, but you don't have an issue with other women and other men doing it, then that's something you need to check with yourself. It's not necessarily our problem to deal with, but we are not going to apologize for it either. And that's just the truth of it.
And that's the real talk. I'm just looking around for my Bible, just because you're preaching right now. But at the same time, Katrina, I know you probably have to go at some point, so just give us a wave and let us know that you've got to go. And this has been my issue with this whole thing. We've got Sasha Banks, who's a bona fide star. We've got Naomi, who as well is a star. That time when she came back at the Royal Rumble with the big afro, that was the talk of not just wrestling but mainstream media in general. So Naomi has that as well. Yes, she may not have as many accolades in wrestling as Sasha Banks does, but she is just as much recognized as well. So my issue is now that these women have put in the work. They've done what they've needed to do. They've got the accolades. They've put in, extra training and gone through the hardships of traveling and having to balance family life and his wrestling life and all the rest of it. But yet, when it's their time to make a point or to add their opinion to their creative and how things are going, they're not given the same respect as, say, a Randy Orton or a John Cena. And yeah, these guys have been 10-time world champions, but they had that type of respect before they got to those points. They put in the work and then earned that respect. Why is it taking women in general, and then add on top of that being a black woman, why is it taking so long for them to then get that type of respect? Like, what is the issue here? And that's a bit of a rhetorical question because we know the answer. I've already said it. Women, black, simple. But I fail to understand. Why that can't be changed. Mex, do you have any kind of idea as to, just what's going on here? What the real problem is with all of this?
I think part of it is how obviously there are problems which have been mentioned here. So I'm not excusing it at all. These are very serious things that they do need to. I think NK said in the chat, just the whole industry needs to change. It doesn't matter if it's WWE or AEW. These problems keep arising. The women's tag team championships was never WWE's idea. Right. I think that's the first thing. The likes of Sasha Banks was probably a massive advocate for it. So this is not a priority for them. They don't necessarily care about it. I would argue, amongst others, that Sasha Banks should have probably won this year's Royal Rumble.
Yep.
They shelved her for Ronda Rousey. And now, effectively, if the stories are to be believed, they want Sasha to help put Ronda over. Now, if you're in Sasha's, shoes, how must you feel about that? Firstly, I didn't win the one accolade I probably need to, complete my set of achievements for someone else that you now want me to put over. It's just absolutely mind-blowing the way they're dealing with things. Like we're saying, the whole unprofessionalism chat. Well, Tony Storm wasn't unprofessional. Jeff Hardy wasn't unprofessional. When Becky and Charlotte Flair decided to throw belts at each other in the middle of the ring, that wasn't unprofessional. No statement was made. When Charlotte Flair and Nia Jax kind of went off script and started punching each other up in the ring, nothing was said. But you've chosen this occasion, and it's literally, as the phrase goes, they hung them out to dry. They fed them to the wolves. They've let them get run over by a bus. WWE have said, we have nothing to do with this. They let you lot down, sort of thing. Right. And they've just absolutely just left them for the internet. And I don't know how something like this is going to be fixed. People are, saying that Sasha Banks has enough pull and stuff like that to, they won't release Sasha Banks. And, Naomi has the likes of Jimmy Uso, Roman Reigns to bat for her and stuff like that. It's not really the point. It's not really the point. Sasha Banks, this is not the first time. 2019, I think it was, WrestleMania 35, really said she walked out. She wanted her release, allegedly. They said no, take an extended break. She's at her tail's end. And if you don't mind, I think this would be a perfect place. I just want to play a video I saved for this. They said in the chat that she's a draw. Stephanie and Katrina have said she's a star. They're running out of, anything pull here to keep her. Right. She's becoming, beyond them.
And that's where I have my issue. So obviously, as I've already said, as we've all said, she's an absolute star. Why is it that when she has an issue with her creative, she's not given the same respect as someone else who is, who has that respect? As I said, Roman Reigns or Randy Orton, and some others in the past, even Austin, who she was just talking to. I guess the other part of it is as well, is that you can change the names, you can change the faces of these tag team champions. You could put Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, for example. If they said the same thing, the logistics for me comes down to all they want to do is focus on making that those tag team championships great, and then having other women come in to take on the champions. Sasha Banks, I've seen on Twitter where people have said the stuff like, why are you complaining? You're going to have a championship match. We're talking about a 7-time women's champion and a 2-time women's champion. Why do they need to feel special because they're getting a championship match where they've already been told that they're not going to win? When they're holding belts that they want to put over and being told, oh, now wait 2 months. What part of that is supposed to make them feel happy or fine or content in any of it? Stephanie, let's move the conversation just a little bit. Mex mentioned about Sasha having this star power and what's going to happen next. Have you kind of given any thought to what could transpire from all of this? Does Sasha leave? Does she get another extended break? Does she just get a slap on the wrist and she's back in a couple of weeks? What do you think is going to happen with both Sasha and Naomi from all of this?
I believe if they don't work it out, considering they are still the women's tag team champions as of now, because even though they're saying that they laid their titles on the table and gave them up, they have yet to address what the future of the titles hold. So by title alone, they still are the champions. I feel like if Sasha and Naomi feel like they're being held back or feeling like they aren't being listened to or being thrown up under the bus, and if they feel that way, and if WWE doesn't seek to fix the issue or doesn't seek to heal what's been said or what's been done, they're going to lose 2 of the pillars that they have, and it's going to be their loss. It's going to be their loss. It's going to be all their loss, and it's going to be their fault. And honestly, Sasha and Naomi will succeed regardless to where they're at. They're too talented. They're 2 amazing stars. They have everything. The world is their oyster. If WWE doesn't seek to fix it between now and the rest of this week, they are in danger of losing probably 2 of the greatest stars that they've ever had. And that'll be their issue, and they will have to deal with that for the rest of their company's existence.
Katrina, with every time we see anybody upset, especially in the last year or so, in WWE, the first thing we see on Twitter is they're going to AEW. They'll go to AEW. They'll be better off in AEW. If we were to ever see, Sasha leave and go to AEW, do you think that would be a good thing for her, for AEW? How would you see that type of thing transpire?
I don't like necessarily the discord that every time somebody leaves WWE, AEW is the correct place for them. AEW also has a lot of work with their women's division. That is, again, another rant for a whole nother day. I don't like how they even represent the women, where if you get women's matches, it's always on dark. And that reconfirmed that I was at the show in Almont last week, and literally women's matches, and then you get to the main show and it's that one match, and I'm like, I'm literally here to cover the women's matches at AEW. There's one women's match on the card. So that they have a lot of work. Tony's handle of Big Swole when she came out and how petty he got, where he was talking like he wasn't a CEO of a wrestling company, also agitated me. I was very annoyed with the way he handled that. And while we all know Vince has done some things, you're not going to catch him on Twitter like having an emotional meltdown because somebody said that they didn't like something at the company. I think a lot of people can fail to realize two people can work at the same place and have the same boss and have very different experiences. Especially for a Black woman. When Stephanie mentioned the whole you have to work double hard, we do, and we're never allowed the same mistakes. We're not allowed the same graces for a mistake. We're not. We have to be damn near perfect in every single thing we do, or we are like they come so quick. They're just waiting for that one little slip up so they can say, "See, well, they didn't deserve this. They didn't work for this. They're handed it to them. Well, what else do you guys want? They're Black." Like that's supposed to mean something. The Black part is obviously we can't change the skin color. We are who we are. But let's not discredit what work Sasha's done. I do think Sasha's a bit above wrestling right now. I don't think she would even need AEW wouldn't know what to do with Sasha, honestly. As far as Naomi, I think people also, she was the very first NXT champion. Before it became NXT, she's the first NXT champion. Before it became NXT, when it's I believe FMW, she was the very first.
Yeah.
Yes. So she's the first, champion of the NXT. Everybody loved the Black and Gold brand before it became the 2.0, and people forget that. She had amazing matches with the likes of like AJ Lee, who people praised. And again, it's like one of the most athletic, even some better. Her ring set is better than some of the women people praise. And it's not to talk down on any woman, it's just to prove a point about it again. But because they had an issue, well, y'all should have just did your job. Yet again, we praise people leaving their jobs all the time. Either it's about self-care and being mentally okay, or it's not. But you can't pick and choose because now they're Black women. Now that's where you draw the line. So I don't think they should go to AEW. I don't think they will handle either one of them well. It will be that 1 week big thing where it's like, oh, we have a new signing, and then they'll probably be on AEW Dark, unfortunately. I really feel that. I feel like, if anything, Naomi, again, I think Sunday she just posted about how she keeps forgetting how loved she is. She posted this video of people screaming and cheering for her. And I was like, yes, because like you are so loved, Naomi, like so loved, and so many people love you. And I don't think people realize like she has fans. It's not like she's like she has them, always has. And so I think if it comes down to them having a lead, they will be fine. And Naomi is talented, and Sasha again is above WWE now. She's not stupid. She's been popping up everywhere at award show. I've been watching her pop up. I've been watching her pop up and show out. She does not need them anymore. And if they want to be that ridiculous, when Sasha Banks has like brought in so many little Black girl fans before there was, Bianca became the next person to bring in those little girl fans, that will be just, that'll be insane. Like if they feel like that's the correct thing to do. So I don't think AEW should take them. I think Tony needs to work on his own house personally with women in the company. But I think if Vince or whoever is like feeling away, if they want to be that ridiculous and not realizing how this is going to hurt them, then, I guess Vince will have to see in like 10 years when he wants to bring somebody back for a Hall of Fame speech. So I'm not done.
Next, what are your thoughts on the possibilities of what Sasha does, of what Naomi does in the future?
Before I get into it, I think we need to say goodbye. Thank you and goodbye to Stephanie and Katrina for coming through.
For sure.
If you guys need to go, then
I definitely have to go. I gotta get my kids for school. Thank you guys so much for having me. And Stephanie, if you stay on, just keep it. You was preaching, girl. You was preaching.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katrina, for your time.
Katrina.
Thank you very much, man. It's been great. So we're gonna. Stephanie's going to stay with us, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to stay.
Stuff. So next, going back to it. So what are your thoughts on where this could go? Or does Sasha go to AEW? Does it make a difference? What does Naomi do? Where are we going?
With all due respect, Sasha Banks is above AEW's women division. Like, I'm sorry, it has to be said. Like she's head and shoulders above what they're doing over there. I want the best for that division because we have some people over there that we're very invested in as well.
Right.
But yeah, like Katrina just said, they need to work on their own house before I think they can attract someone, you know, the ilk of Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks played a key position in the whole women's evolution and stuff in WWE, which, you know, done its thing leading up to probably 2018 was when it was at its highest. Now she's on a mission here to do something for the tag team titles, and it's not quite working. I don't know how this is saved. I think some stories are still going to come out in the next couple of days, so we can understand, you know, how things are going. Sasha Banks getting released is not an option for WWE. I just don't think they're going to do it. She's worth far too much to them to just release. At best, if she's really disgruntled, she sits at home and, you know, just waits for her contract to run out, however long is left on her contract. I think Sasha Banks is also being painted a bit like the ringleader in this situation.
I was going to get to that.
Maybe because she has previous in terms of this. She has been very vocal in the past. Again, like Katrina said, Naomi doesn't, you know, come across as someone that, you know, hurt a fly sort of thing. But Naomi has a, you know, she walked out as well. She's a grown woman. She walked out as well, and she's got to have to take maybe whatever repercussions come her way. And this is going to have to be a thing as well. Like, will they be dealt with equally? Yes, Sasha Banks is a bigger star, so to speak. Right. But you would like to think, you know, if there is going to be a punishment, the punishment is the same for both. Hopefully there isn't a punishment. More than anything for me now, I think even if Sasha and Naomi do return, this may just be a better time than any to just give up completely on these tag titles. I just feel like if they're not going to give it everything that it needs to give, and you know, this is with Sasha, someone you're putting the championship on that is a big advocate for this championship, and you're not gonna you know, follow through with the creative ideas. Right. It's really just, you know, gonna keep making people disgruntled, 50-50 booking all over the show. So yeah, I think at the same time, like, there's a lot of lessons that need to be learned out of this situation, but yeah, I'm not sure if these titles, if there's a future for them in WWE after this.
I know someone in the comments, I think it was Nikki Bushi, who commented about, you know, the possibility of both of them not wrestling at all if they were to leave. You know, we've talked about, you know, Sasha going to Hollywood. And I think it could be a possibility of both of them not wrestling. What Naomi then does, I'm not too sure. Where Naomi goes, again, we've said already, you know, AEW wouldn't know what to do with her. It would be the very same thing as Katrina said earlier, where she'd go there, it'd probably be a big fanfare for about 2 weeks, and then she'd end up on Dark, facing the local competitor and beating them after 3 minutes, if that. You know, Stephanie, do you see that as a real possibility if it was to go that far to where they either leave or are sacked basically from their contract, with both of them not wrestling at all?
The thing, it's like we said earlier, like if Sasha were to not wrestle anymore after this point, which would make me sad as a fan because I do love her and respect her. It's like I said earlier, if she decided to go to Hollywood and probably like take a break from wrestling as a whole, then I wouldn't be mad at that at all, because it's like her star power is rising to where wrestling isn't just her primary focus. There are talks of her possibly being like the next Rock at some point, in terms of, you know, her star power, in terms of possibly being like a star in Hollywood. So it's not like she would necessarily be in need of anything after that point. But in terms of Naomi, I see two roads happening with Naomi. Number one, she could go to Impact if she doesn't go to AEW. And her star power in terms of wrestling, with people respecting her and loving her, and if she were to decide to go to Impact, I feel like that would be huge for their Knockouts division, simply because their Knockouts division doesn't get enough credit for what they do for women's wrestling as a whole. That would be cool if she did decide to go there and still wrestle. And then number two, she also has an amazing personality. So a part of me would wonder, how would she do if she started like a talk show or something? Like, I don't know. Like, that's something I sort of thought about, because even with her personality, like on Total Divas and stuff, and just seeing how she is in real life, like, how would it be if she decided, to be like a talk show host, like during the daytime or something like that? Like, that would be cool too. But either way, or if she decided to go into fashion or into hair or something like that, like, I feel like the sky would be the limit for Naomi. It's just that her star power will look a little bit different than Sasha's at this moment. But that's not to say that Naomi would just be done with it. But then again, if WWE, it's like I said, if WWE decided to relieve them of their duties, it would be a huge mistake, because Sasha's an amazing star and she brings in so many different people, so many different fans, especially Black female fans, and so does Naomi. Because it's like you said with that Royal Rumble moment when she came out with the natural hair, she was being featured on so many different magazines I didn't even know was even, even cared about wrestling, like Essence magazine. That's a magazine that I read frequently. And they even had a feature on her with Sasha and with Mia Yim and with Bianca Belair. So it's just like, if they let them go, it would just be a huge mistake on their part. But it wouldn't be the end for Naomi, and it wouldn't be the end for Sasha either. But it would be a huge mistake on WWE's part. Because just because you see someone in the bubble of just wrestling doesn't mean that they're only meant to just stay there.
Very true.
I think it's one of them ones where even if they were let go and that became like, public, they've been released from their contracts. All of these companies, organizations, management, agents, PR companies will grab them, to tell their story, one or two. Right. Let's push this woman that has been kind of unjustly released from her job into this big position and almost make WWE regret their decision anyway. So right now it's a hot situation. Like, if WWE act out of spite or try to act, in a way to just protect themselves, like they did with that silly statement they put out, then this could actually get worse for them. Like, they need to stand back. And I don't understand why we find out things from dirt sheets, right? But ultimately, we shouldn't have known this. They could have started the broadcast because the way things have sounded, Naomi and Sasha may have been gone by the time the live broadcast started. So they were just not on the show. Instead of a six-pack challenge, a fatal four-way, and we move. Like, I don't even understand why this has come out. Even if they walked out, right, cool, no worries, we'll deal with this. Let's just put on a 3-hour show and we'll deal with this in the week. Yeah, they kind of ran to kind of, get their story out first. Let's make sure that maybe Sasha and Naomi don't say anything, and let's put out this statement and embarrass them on the live TV show. And this has potential to backfire on them massively.
But we'll call them unprofessional. Yeah, because that makes sense.
That part.
It's interesting. So, during this whole time we've been talking, and obviously since the news came out, and Stephanie just mentioned Impact. Before all of this happened last night for us, and my whole thing for this show was going to be about the Black women that are in, that are champions at the moment. So you've got your Jade Cargill, you've got Tasha Steelz, obviously you've got Bianca Belair, and obviously you've got the tag team champions, Sasha and Naomi. Stephanie, you mentioned the possibility of Naomi going to Impact, because Impact Wrestling seems to care a lot more about their women's division, their knockouts division, as they call it. With Tasha Steelz as the champion currently, do you think that would actually be honestly a good move for Naomi? And would she thrive? Because now we've got, as I said, Tasha Steelz as champion. Mia Yim's just come back. Taya Valkyrie's made her return and has won a championship there as well. The AAA, which she's won before. Deonna Purrazzo was, over the last 12 months, one of the best female wrestlers on the planet. And all of those women are there right now. Could it be that this may play, if it goes that far, it plays into Impact's favor, and then Naomi goes there and then boom, we've got this even bigger resurgence of women's wrestling in Impact.
Yeah, it would help. It would definitely help Impact because Impact, their knockouts division is so stacked and it's full of so much talent. Them having Naomi there would only be a bonus plus for them. Like it would literally just be a bonus plus for them because they would have all of this talent plus this woman who had this huge following in WWE and then WWE fumbled the ball and then she decides to go to Impact and then it would bring more eyes to their product because of and it would probably make Impact and whoever runs, you know, whatever channel that there is, because I know they're on Access TV for certain people in the United States here. Like it would make them sort of, I guess, design something a little bit more to make it more accessible for people. Because Naomi is a star, like I said. So if she were to go and become an Impact Knockout, it's like you would have so many different deals, so many different opportunities that would happen with an already stacked division. Like it would do nothing but bump up Impact's knockout division and just make them more stacked than they already are. Like it would just be a bonus plus for them. But it's like I said, if WWE were to lose her, and then on top of that, with her being connected to the bloodline as well, not saying that that has anything to do with it, but she is connected with them via marriage. Like that would probably cause more of a wrench in stuff, personally. So WWE needs to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to fixing this situation because there are a lot of cards that they could play if it doesn't go in their direction. So
Mex, what do you think about that possibility? Do you think that's like, would it make sense? Could it even happen? Like, are we fantasizing a little bit too much about the possibility of Naomi going to Impact and that being something?
When it comes to wrestling, the wrestling industry, I do not want to see Sasha Banks and Naomi anywhere else. I know Impact look after their women very, very well. You know, probably on par with how well NXT was booking women before the whole, 2.0 thing happened. Very, very well. I have no interest in seeing either lady there. Like, they're at the point now. Naomi is a 10, 12-year veteran in WWE. Like, we're seeing people get released on, a quarterly basis. This woman has stuck around. Like, she is a fixture on our TVs for 12 years or so. Like, going anywhere else, it's not needed. Like, I don't see someone, Naomi as well, as someone that's got that maybe super duper incredible passion to wrestle beyond WWE. Like Stephanie said, I think other ventures could, kind of start consuming her time, especially if, she was to leave in an ugly manner in terms of what's happened with this. She could definitely be the face of a lot of things. Sasha Banks, we know already, Hollywood is calling her name, calling her number, and it's a matter of time before we start seeing her pop up on the big screen more and more. I think this is going to be resolved. I think it has to be resolved. These aren't assets you just leave. This isn't someone throwing there, like we say, a Tony Storm that was, not good enough to be on WWE TV. Let's not get it twisted, but someone that wasn't being used regularly enough to justify keeping her, or a Jeff Hardy that's in his later years. Like, these are people that you feature on TV week in, week out. They're holding championships. They've held championships, your top titles. I don't know if such thing like HR exists in WWE, because we hear so much nonsense with treatment of superstars that HR probably isn't a thing in that company. But someone with half a brain needs to sit down and speak to whoever that their personal liaison is, and just be like, look, this was dealt with on you guys' part really badly. Let these women come back and organize an actual conversation with adults. Remove all the children with childish agendas from these conversations, and let the adults speak about adult stuff and how they're feeling and how we're going to move forward. And this will be resolved. How long? I don't know. WWE will most likely do something. If they can squash this in the next week, we'll see Sasha Banks, or maybe Sasha Banks and Naomi appear on Friday Night SmackDown,
SmackDown.
and nothing ever happened. Never ever mentioned again. But you know, they like doing stuff like that. Like,
Right.
well, the whole statement, nothing will ever, But yeah, it needs to be sorted out, ideally sooner rather than later. And yeah, I would like. I'm saying this optimistically, but I don't necessarily believe it. I would like them to do something with the women's tag championships following this, something serious, actually organize tag teams within this division. But I think this is really just, the final nail in the coffin for these titles. And they haven't worked out to be what I guess Sasha would have wanted them to be, unfortunately.
And that's the thing. I remember when they first won the titles, and on this show we were talking about what the future for those titles were, and it didn't feel optimistic at all. It was great that they won something, and that Naomi's finally put another belt on her, over her shoulder and all that type of thing. And the two ladies were back together. Even the way that happened was a little bit like, how?
Bro, if you remember, they won the titles, and then we said, okay, yeah, what's next? And in the same week, Zelina and Carmella split up, and then they had started teasing Rhea and Liv splitting up.
Yep.
So then it was like, huh? And then they brought together Shayna and Natalya, and we know that's just a quick short-term fix. Same way last week or 2 weeks ago, they threw together Doudrop and Nikki ASH. There's no long-term planning for this title.
Right.
There's no long-term planning in WWE, but there's no long-term planning for this title at all. Like,
and that's exactly what I was going to say, because we had this whole thing where I think like the next night on Raw, after WrestleMania, they had this thing with Liv and Rhea. Then they went off and I think Liv and Rhea lost the match, but then faced them again the following week.
Yeah.
And it's more or less the same thing that's happened each week since then, because Natalya and Shayna lost, and then they faced them again the following week. It's very clear that this whole fantasy of Sasha Banks to have these tag team titles as something that WWE care about, unfortunately, is not going to happen. And that's hard to take, because at the same time, Sasha Banks has put in so much work before the tag team champions came about. When she won it back, when it was her and Bayley as well, the work that those two did during that few months was phenomenal. But then as soon as they lost those titles, boom, we're getting mixed match, people put together, and Nia and Shayna and whoever, Rhea Ripley and Nikki ASH, Alexa Bliss and Nikki. And I'm just like, what is the point in all of this? I guess to a point, there's the saving grace in this, in a roundabout way, is that it's very clear these tag team championships probably need to be gone. It would be best for everyone involved. But then the worrying thing is then, what then happens with Sasha and Naomi? Are they then pushed, towards becoming singles champions again? Sasha possibly. It may take a while. Naomi, we just don't know, because we haven't seen that. I mean, we saw a bit of a flash of that with Charlotte a few months ago, just before Mania, but that was only to really, at the end of the day, put over Charlotte for WrestleMania. So it's I don't know how this gets resolved in a way where anyone is going to feel content and happy. It just feels like a very it's a situation that's destroyed all parts in my eyes, and I don't know what the answer possibly could be.
Well, I do have an idea. I actually have two ideas as to how they could possibly fix it in terms of the problems of the women's tag titles. And it's such a shame because it's like you said, Sasha and Bayley both, being the first women's tag team champions, they advocated for it so much for them to be utilized in a way that would make sense and give more opportunities for the women. And it's sad that they don't necessarily have a lot of long-term planning for it, and sort of offering any type of reasons as to why these teams are together, as opposed to just slapping them together.
Right.
I believe my two ideas to help it make it better would be either number one, you bring in talent from NXT or NXT UK to be your teams, just to give those women more of an opportunity on a mainstream stage, or of course utilize the ones that you don't see on television as much, like Xia Li or Shotzi, or Aaliyah, like women like that, and even Queen Zelina and Carmella, whom you don't see regularly on Raw, SmackDown, and give them more of an opportunity that way. Or you can take the women's tag titles and turn both of those titles into mid-card titles for both shows, which would still give more of an opportunity for those women to fight for something other than the Raw and SmackDown women's titles that still have so much prestige, and showing the women who are on the top. But then it would still give the women who aren't necessarily gunning for those two top titles to gun for something else. And having a mid-card title for the women is definitely long over. A mid-card singles title is pretty long overdue, because I've never really, I haven't seen that before on a mainstream level. Not to say that it hasn't happened, because at Belladonna it does happen here in Alabama, but I've never seen it on a mainstream level. So if something like that would happen for WWE and they turn those titles into like a mid-card singles title for the women, then that would give the women something more to do and something to add more prestige to, as opposed to slapping tag teams together for almost no reason.
I really like that idea. However, if it's anything to go by, the US title and Intercontinental title, it's been like, I saw a graphic maybe a week ago that the last time the Intercontinental Championship was on a pay-per-view was when Apollo Crews lost it to Big E at WrestleMania last year. That's the last time the IC title was on a pay-per-view. Like, and we know they ain't really been doing nothing with booking that on TV, especially when Shinsuke was champion following that. US Championship's getting a bit of shine now, but that's because, Vince McMahon's little project theory is, So that sounds like a really good idea and something they can manage a lot easier rather than having to put women together and do tag team and stuff. We already know WWE don't care about tag teams either. But yeah, just because of how they treat the Intercontinental title and the US title, I'm not sure if it will benefit in any way, but that could be a good, way to manage it at least.
Yeah, in terms of logistically, in terms of a management standpoint, as you said, Mex, not having to throw random women together, it would help. But we're also seeing this whole unification thing going on in general as well with both brands at the moment. So unfortunately, Stephanie's great idea just wouldn't even get, a chance to be heard by anyone in WWE. Guys, we've only got a few minutes left. I think we've kind of talked about every avenue we possibly could about this whole crazy situation. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it develops over the next few days, maybe even weeks. We hope it's not a week. We hope that, what Mick said about them just turning up on SmackDown and this statement being completely forgotten about and them defending against, I don't know, Shotzi and Aaliyah or something like that will happen on SmackDown. But Stephanie, thank you for being with us. But give us the most important information. Where can we find you on social media and everything that you're connected to? The Belladonnas, Women's Wrestling Talk. Where can we find you on the socials?
Okay, well, thank you guys for having me and also having Katrina as well. You can follow me, Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy. And you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Hardy WrestlePod and Hardy Wrestling Podcast, and listen to my show, The Hardy Wrestling Podcast, everywhere you get your shows and stuff. I just released my 95th episode this past weekend, and it's a really good show, and I talk about a lot of different things. Of course, not this situation. I'll probably talk about that this weekend, but but I do talk about a lot of different things on my show. I talk about positivity in wrestling and a lot of the things that I liked in wrestling this past week that went on. And I also, of course, doing work with Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet with Katrina. We have an NXT and an NXT UK after show that you should check out on Thursdays. And then we also have the SmackDown and Rampage after show with Dreon Santana, our editor-in-chief, that we do every Friday night. And basically with the Belladonna division, we're having another event in August. So that's going to be taking place in Maryland, I believe. So if you follow at the Belladonna division, you'll see a lot of what we've got going on there as the first all-female promotion in the state of Alabama in the United States. So I'm really proud to be a part of all of these different things. It felt like only yesterday I was just a fan. Now I'm in the action and it feels good. So I'm just really appreciative for every opportunity I get. And I'm just really grateful to be on this show because I've followed you guys for a long time. So I appreciate this so much.
That's amazing to know. That's amazing to know. Mex, I think you may have a competitor in terms of the hardest working person in black wrestling, if I'm honest. Wow.
We're all doing it. Everyone's doing their bit. Love it.
But you know what? You know what's crazy? It also then reiterates the same fact that Stephanie said earlier in the on the show about us having to work doubly hard just to get close to equal opportunities and stuff like that. So Stephanie, amazing, and thank you for being with us. Your insights have been perfect and great, and it was very, very important for us to talk about this situation with a black female perspective. As much as me and Mex love our black women, love people being treated equally and all the rest of it, we had to have the first-hand experience of a black female perspective on this whole thing. Guys, this has been WrstlXtra. You can find me, of course, Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, Black Wrestling A on Twitter. I'll probably be all over Twitter this week because this situation is a crazy one. And of course, you can find Mex, the WrestleManiac UK on Twitter and WrestleManiac.uk on Instagram. And of course, you're watching us on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe. Click that notification bell. Mex is on this thing all day, every day. I don't know who else does it as much as him. But guys, this has been our show, and we will see you again next week.
Peace out, guys. Thank you.